Welcome back to Morning Glory, 23 minutes past 8. Morning, Mike. Great show as usual. Don't know if you remember Mr. Ben, which was a brilliant children's 70s TV show where Mr. Ben magically assumed different occupations. Today's episode stars Jonathan Reynolds MP as Mr. Ben, who will be pretending to be a solicitor. Tomorrow, Keir Starmer MP will star as Mr. Ben pretending to be a Prime Minister. Next week, Mr. Ben will tick the DEI box and become a woman. He will be known as Rachel and we pretending to be an economist. Good old Mr. Ben, says Mandy from Worcester. Well, Mandy, your joke is actually rather more serious than you think because Jonathan Reynolds is in fact in India. He's still in the cabinet. Keir Starmer will be going to the United States of America for a meeting with Donald Trump on Thursday. Harry Cole has written about it this morning in his great column in The Sun on page 10. Harry, very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike. How are we doing?
Yeah, good to see you. Very nice indeed. Are you off to the US of A with his nibs at the end of the week?
I am, yeah. So Macron's in the White House tonight. Donald Trump met the Polish president on Saturday, and third line for European leaders, Keir Starmer will be there on Thursday. And look, I mean, the stakes couldn't really be higher for him. This is sort of what we bandy around phrases like make or break meeting, crunch summit, and the like, probably more than their fair share. But you know, this one's serious.
I mean, it is 3 years to the day, isn't it? Today that the Russia invaded Ukraine. There's still an awful lot we don't know about what the negotiation process is at the moment. But it seems as though we've moved from Zelensky's not involved to at least Zelensky now being spoken to by somebody. You know, he's offered to resign if it means a peace deal can be made. He wants Ukraine to be allowed into NATO. I mean, what line do you think Starmer's going to be going for here?
Well, it's going to be a tightrope for him because obviously, look, we've seen the notoriously thin-skinned president, when he is criticised, sort of hits back. Yeah. Doubles down and goes even further, as Zelensky found out last week when he ended up being called a dictator completely incorrectly for suggesting that, you know, Trump lives in a disinformation warp or whatever the exact phrase was. So I don't think we're going to be seeing Starmer trying to antagonise the president, but, you know, Britain's position is very clear that, you know, Ukraine needs to negotiate, yes, for peace. Everyone wants peace, but peace has to come through strength. And so, look, there is still aid flowing to Ukraine. They've got enough, I think, resources and funds and weapons to keep fighting to the summer. The problem is does anyone really think this negotiation is going to be done by the summer? So I think it's basically keeping Trump in a position to not completely pull the plug before, you know, it will take years for Europe to be able to step up in terms of defence spending, in terms to fill that gap. What happens at the end of the end of this year? And the weapons you know, the missiles and aid and military support that the Ukrainians are getting does dry up. That was the moment of maximum danger there. But at the same time, can Putin really sustain his economy on the footing it is now for another year's worth of fighting? Russian watchers say not. So I think it's basically keeping the situation alive without immediately rolling over and appearing, as Donald Trump has in the last 10 days, to be more willing to sort of treat Ukraine and Russia as equal partners in this than you know, one who was invaded and one who was the aggressor.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess, as I say, it looks as though things have moved on from where they were last week. Now the Germans are going to have a new chancellor as well. It's going to be more right-leaning. I was reading this morning that it's likely that he will want to increase spending on defence as well, which has always been a bit of an interesting conversation in Germany. But, you know, is that going to change the dynamic, do you think?
Well, some of the first comments that the potential new German chancellor made was basically declaring Germany free of independence from America and saying that we need to perhaps even replace NATO with a European defence force. I mean, this stuff is pie in the sky, given that NATO has been the bulwark of European defence for 70 years. Trying to create a sort of bureaucratic, mythical EU defence force in a matter of months is just gibberish. Yeah. So some slightly worrying comments from the Germans there. Perhaps some sort of election night bluster, but if that's really where, you know, the powerhouse, well, once powerhouse, declining powerhouse now of the EU, it is very worrying. President Macron appears to be slightly more trying to play through the old systems of keeping NATO together. There's a big old summit this morning that Zelensky's hosting online with lots of world leaders in a couple of, well, any minute now, actually. So it'll be fascinating to see how that plays out. But I think the panic that has set in across Europe at being told they're going to have to pay their own way has resulted in some serious tantrums in the fact that they could end up trying to throw away the very thing that's defended them all these years, just they've been asked to pay for it.
Yeah.
And how effective was an EU replacement for NATO going to be that doesn't even exist yet, isn't funded? What's going to happen to NATO funding if it's being diverted to EU funding? And really, does anyone have any faith that the EU, the bureaucratic mess that it is, would be able to do this efficiently and quickly? Of course it wouldn't.
No, exactly right. There's been some suggestion that that Starmer, what he ought to do is, if he's going to talk about peacekeeping forces or troops of any kind, they should be talking about UN peacekeeping forces rather than European ones, or certainly not British ones.
Well, the problem is the UN is crippled by the fact that China and Russia have a veto on big issues. They'll be heading to the UN later for this US sort of peace motion, but it's slightly absurd, perverse almost, that the Russians and and their friends in China can have such sway of decisions. And we can put a blue badge and blue hat on these people, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter who they are. It's where they're from. It's it doesn't matter what hats they're wearing, who's going to put up the money for it, who's got the troops for it. And so far, Keir Starmer's come out and he's whistling in the wind a little, because he said we'll commit troops, and everyone said very interesting, thank you very much, and no one else has gone no, we will as well. So the EU, again, it's a little bit like the EU. The UN's, a bureaucratic, slow mess with the added complication of the very people who are trying to keep the peace against have a seat at the table.
Exactly right. And you've written about the famous scene from Love Actually this morning, which is unlikely to be revisited by Donald Trump and Keir Starmer this particular trip. But also, he's still got plenty of problems at home. Worst start for the job market since COVID, according to a piece in the Telegraph. You've got the BP company facing existential crisis over net zero, more pressure on net zero. Another factory, a mini factory, going to be shutting down up in Oxford. Jonathan Reynolds has gone to India for some unknown reason. I can't imagine why. Presumably, somebody just said, is he qualifying and getting his solicitor's qualification from the Polytechnic of Mumbai? I don't know. But, domestically, it's not a great time for him to be concentrating on international affairs, is it?
Yeah, there's also the other sort of threat of the Trump White House is the potential of tariffs that he's threatened to put on the EU, whether Britain would be exempt for those. So that's obviously the economic side of the talks, as well as the security side coming up. But he's spinning a lot of plates, as we say in the paper tomorrow. Yeah. There's a lot of bear traps for him still at home to walk into. This mythical growth still isn't coming anywhere. He's now got to find defence spending uptick, which he's been sort of dragged reluctantly to concluding alongside Rachel Reeves has to happen sooner rather than later, after months of hiding behind a committee and a review and a long drawn out process. We've got this mini budget, not a budget, is a budget coming up in March, where Rachel Reeves, by all accounts, is going to be told by the fiscal watchdog, the OBR, that she's missing all her fiscal targets, so needs to cut spending, increase taxes again potentially. She's saying she won't go down the tax line, but some pretty painful cuts are already coming. And so, he's dancing all over the place. And, he's got his own MPs saying, he should just stick it to Donald Trump. It's, well, actually, how helpful and productive would that actually be? It's all very nice and might make you feel warm and fuzzy like you're watching a Hugh Grant film, but this is Big Boy Club now. Like, this isn't the playground. Let's get real. And then also having a look tomorrow at this sort of ongoing row that he's having already annoyed the farmers, the pensioners, business people, employers. It looks like Starmer's picking a very, very dangerous fight, actually, with the lovies. Yeah. Now, I don't necessarily always agree with actors and actresses and film directors and novelists and the like when they start to bang their drums, because it normally means they want to ban something, or we should be nicer to Hamas, something like that. But actually, they've got a point on this one, and it's the fact that Keir Starmer appears to be willing to change British copyright law to help big tech. These firms, these AI firms that are basically scraping 10,000 years of human knowledge to create this, these sort of chat GBTs, these Groks, these platforms that, artificial intelligence platforms that rely on the fact they need to basically rip off everyone else's work in order to function. And so lots of people are finally now saying, well, hold on, you grifting billionaires in Silicon Valley, how come you're making billions out of all of these AI tools that rely on hard work that we're not being paid? And so for once, I think the Lovey's got a point, and it's a dangerous enemy for Keir Starmer to make because they're meant to be his people.
Well, they certainly are. I mean, interesting that you mentioned that, because a story around this morning saying actually demand for software developers who created these AI bots has slumped ever since they were created, because basically the AI bots are doing the jobs that they made them do. So something like 45,000 software engineering jobs have disappeared completely in Britain because they're all being done by AI.
Well, that's going to be a battle for us all. I hope that AI would never be able to one day produce a popular breakfast radio station.
I always say they can't possibly. No, they can't possibly predict what I'm going to say, because I never know what I'm going to say until I say it. To be honest, I mean that's the way it goes. But Harry, listen, great to see you. Thank you very much indeed, Harry Cole in the Sun today, page 10. Don't miss it every single Monday.